Video games. They've always had a special place in my heart. I still remember the day my father brought home an N64. My mom scolded him, screamed at him, and couldn't figure out why my dad, of all people, would bring home a console. Something that I could waste my countless hours of my day playing when my mom was up making food or cleaning the dishes or doing whatever moms do. And I was homeschooled, and I could just slip, behind the cracks downstairs and play some N64. My first game that I played was Diddy Kong Racing for the N64. That was the first game I ever played on that console. I'd played, Super Nintendos and stuff before that, but my first game that I placed into a console by myself with no one around was Diddy Kong Racing. And it was then and there where I fell in love with video games. But today I want to talk about games that need sequels, games that need a number 3, games which you may have never heard of. Or maybe you have, I don't know. But I love video games so much that I wanted to make a video talking about what I think games that need a second game in the franchise or a third game in the franchise which just hasn't been done before. And first up we have Dark Cloud for the PlayStation 2. Now I'm not going to go into a whole lot of this, you can search it up for yourself, but Dark Cloud was one of the very first PlayStation 2 games that came out and was a very successful hit based upon the role-playing style elements that it had. One of the biggest things that I love about Sony is they have some of the best console title related games, I think, from Nintendo, from Microsoft. Like Sony, I'm not a Sony PlayStation fanboy, but a lot of the games that they can remake a sequel to or a third game would be highly successful based upon how many classics of good PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games that are out there that have been made for that console. And Dark Cloud is definitely one of those games. I don't know how many people were even around who watched me that could even play that in late 2000, but it's definitely a game that if you haven't played, I would highly recommend it. It is amazing. The next game would have to be, we had a BanjoKazooie, we had a BanjoTooie, and then Rare got bought out by, Microsoft bought the company Rare, and everything that Rare has made since then has really been a quite big hit and miss with the exception of Viva Pinata. I don't know about you, but I loved Viva Pinata growing up. I loved playing that. It was so visually, oh my goodness, playing Viva Pinata while high is one of the best things you can possibly do. But let's be honest for a moment, a third BanjoKazooie game, would that not be amazing? Even if it came out for Xbox One or something, it would be highly successful, assuming that Rare did the right thing on how they developed the game, because they made an Xbox 360 BanjoKazooie game. I don't even remember what it was called. It was so bad. It was nothing like BanjoKazooie or BanjoTooie. It couldn't even compare, to say the least, at all. It was some, drive, a vehicle around, and you customize things. It was really odd and bizarre. It was not what we originally grew up with BanjoKazooie and BanjoTooie. Two fantastic open-world adventure exploration games with a soundtrack to everyone will remember. I don't know about you, but soundtrack games back in the era of, BanjoKazooie and N64 had some of the best soundtracks of all time. That includes PlayStation 2. Nowadays, we get all these games, and hardly any of them, for the most part, are really memorable to me. Along with the same developers of Rare, why don't we have a Conker's Bad Fur Day 2? We all know that would be highly successful. We know that the first one was a fucking blast. My parents, unfortunately, wouldn't let me play it because they read an article talking about, Big Pile, one of the boss fights, this big pile of shit. And he sings a happy song about shit or whatever. But that game in itself, there's two games Microsoft has right there that they put their mind to and made a third BanjoKazooie, a second Conker's Bad Fur Day, and kept to the original like they did with the first game. You know that it wouldn't be bad. It can't be bad. The problem with game developers nowadays is they want to make something different to where it has nothing in relation to the first two games. Next up on the list would, of course, have to be, we all knew this was coming. We all knew that if it does come eventually in the next 25 years, there'll probably be so much hype around it that it may not even be good, even if it is a good game, because people have elevated to such a high status, that it's Half-Life 3. There's a compilation on YouTube of Gabe literally saying every single year, we're in the works, and then it's yeah, we're not talking about, yeah, and then he just kind of avoids all the things. Over the course of 12 years of him saying things about Half-Life 3, and then eventually just coming yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, Half-Life 2 did fall under one of the biggest cliffhangers in video game history of all games. It was a story that so many people were invested into, so naturally, there's a huge fan base behind the Half-Life franchise to see what happens, because the cliffhanger is just so what the fuck type of thing. And everybody wants to know what happens. I want to know what happens. I want a third Half-Life game, and It may happen, it may not, who the fuck knows. If anything, when Valve introduces its next Source engine, it will most likely be introduced with Half-Life 3, assuming they ever do that in the next 20 years. But it's about time that Valve updates their Source engine, which I believe they already have done, they just haven't showcased it yet. Hopefully we get it within the next decade. Next up would have to be from Nintendo. What are you doing, Nintendo? Seriously, what are you doing? We had, like, Metroid Other M, but we had no Metroid for the Wii, other than Other M, and then nothing for the Wii U, no big Metroid Prime game. Perhaps if you finally took the stick out of your ass, Nintendo, and allowed third-party developers to make more games for your console, my Wii U wouldn't have an inch pile of dust on it, because we all know the Metroid franchise is one of Nintendo's biggest titles, along with Legend of Zelda, and they seem to be doing pretty good with Legend of Zelda now. If anything, I hope we can get a new Metroid game for the Nintendo NX, or allow some other companies to design a Metroid game so you guys can get some better games for your console. That's not to say that Nintendo has bad games. It's just they have a few good games for a console lifespan that lasts for years, but they don't have that many good quality games to buy. Another game that needs a sequel would have to be Folk. I always struggle saying Folklore for the PlayStation 3. This game was visually impeccable with an amazing art style. But apparently the game didn't sell very well, but the game got very high reviews, surprisingly enough. But there was really no big market team behind this game, which is why it didn't do very well. I mean, I have a list on my computer of hundreds of games that need to have sequels or to make a third game in that franchise for Sony titles that would be highly successful. And my final game for this video would have to be Ape Escape 4. I don't know about yourself, but I love playing Ape Escape, all the 1, 2, 3s that came out, and I'm quite shocked that, considering how successful and how much fun they were, Sony hasn't gotten on the bandwagon to make a fourth game for the PlayStation 4. And those are just a few of my top games. Oh, no, I'm not done yet, actually. I can't believe I almost forgot this. The third and my final game that needs a designer, developer team is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 3. Now, one of my all-time favorite games of all time, in my top 5 games in the world that I love, is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 was shit, but having a third KOTOR game would be, I think, one of the best-selling Star Wars titles of all time, hands down. The team behind that, BioWare, did such a good job with not only how the gameplay, the stories, the overall RPG elements of the Star Wars universe, but they know how to do storytelling very, very well in the Star Wars franchise. That was clearly shown with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and a third game in that franchise would be... I would probably faint. Nothing could obtain my excitement for a third Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. But those are my list, guys. That's my list of games that I want sequels to or a third title to. Feel free to write comments down below telling me what games you would like to see a sequel or a third game, because there's plenty of games that I did not mention that need a sequel or need a third title. As always, my name is Daniel Sulzbach, and this is Mr. Repzion. Thank you for watching this video. My TeamSpeak is linked down below along with all my social media. Hope you guys have a fantastic Saturday, and I'm bringing back game reviews relatively soon on this channel.